Welcome back to another episode of Status Update, the creator-led podcast that you can listen to at work because it is a work podcast. I'm Stevie Johnson, MD of influencer marketing agency Disrupt.
And I'm Jake Crabb, the marketing manager at that very same influencer marketing agency Disrupt and the voice of Gen Z. Now, today's guest is city banker turned movie mogul. He's the CEO and founder of Lorton Entertainment. It's Julian Bird.
I think that if you make good, interesting, insightful, independent pieces of content, whether they're 5 minutes, whether they're 10 minutes, whether they're 2 hours, people will watch it.
In this episode, we want to answer the question, is it ever too late to make that change in your career? So why don't we get Julian from the green room and see if we can find out. People that are watching and listening to this now won't know the last half hour having to get this set up properly. But Julian, great to have you. As mentioned off camera, we always try and brief some of our guests a little bit before. We start with the questions from a hat segment. Sure. We're running low on the questions now, so they could be quite interesting. They've always been quite a nice, light touch way to kick things off. I don't have my hat today, so you're going to have to take them out of my hand, Jake.
Okay, that's fine.
Do you want to go? We do this every time. Who wants to go first?
I'll let you, as I've remembered my hat as the professional that I am, I will let you pick from one of the few remaining in there. I really hope you get the one I want you to get.
I feel like I always get serious ones. And I
don't think there's many serious ones left in there. I checked earlier.
If you could have any superpower for 24 hours, what would it be? I think it would have to be flight.
Okay, why?
Because I think you would be most famous if you could fly versus any other superpower.
All right. So
if I'm thinking about the Instagram followers, the content you could create, how you could monetize it.
This guy never stops.
It's also very practical, isn't it?
This guy never stops.
Exactly. Yeah. Very practical.
You are so social minded, mate. Honestly, this guy is.
But as Julian said, it's practical as well.
It is. Would you be the same? Would yours be flight?
I was actually thinking flight as well, because it helps me get from A to B. I struggle with my diary. Yeah. And always what I get wrong is the planning of how to get from where to where. And so
see, I'm the same, but I'd be teleportation quicker.
Well, that's that's
boring though.
That's an interesting. Yeah, fair enough.
Okay,
right,
take
I
from
will
my
pick
hands.
from your hands now.
You got 3 options.
I just really hope I don't get stitched up again.
Don't read them.
I'm not reading them. Don't worry. I've not got my glasses on. Okay, what will the next successful social platform look like? I think the next social platform will have a place for communities, and it'll be massive on people being able to speak freely, bit like X is currently and Threads is trying to be. But I think it will really be the kind of big community push, but it'll have a USP like Be Real had when it launched, while maintaining a kind of conversational community platform. Whatever the next big social platform is, it needs to evolve constantly and not rest on its laurels, because that's why Be Real and Threads are just dying a death, in my opinion.
Pretty good answer.
That was a proper answer.
Yeah. All right, Jake. You came to play today.
Listen, I don't do things by half. I told you I'm a bloody professional.
That's very impressive.
Julian, do you want to pick one of mine or one of Stevie's?
I want a Stevie's.
So these are what I've written for Jake.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think there are any more serious ones. So this could be interesting. You could choose one.
What is the weirdest food combination you enjoy? So that's not a serious one.
No,
it's not. But I think it's quite PG-13, so we'll take it.
I think I love mackerel, and everyone hates mackerel.
Okay.
Yeah, and chuck that in with some tomato sauce and some spaghetti with a load of tinned vegetables. It sounds horrible, but with a bit of sprinkled cheese on top, perfect.
A delicacy.
Yeah. No, it's not at all.
Do you cook this for other people, or is it just for yourself?
No, this is purely for me. And I wouldn't say I naturally do it, but it's easy for me. I'm not a natural cook, as you can tell by that, but it's remarkably tasty.
I don't think that sounds very tasty.
No, well, the question was weirdest, I guess. I just thought, well, what's the strangest?
Yeah. What was yours then? Your weirdest food combination?
Weirdest food combination. This is going to sound like a cop-out. Hot sauce was mentioned last week, so I'm going to steer clear of hot sauce, but that's not weird. Weirdest food combination. Okay, it's not a combination. It's just one thing. But sometimes toast without anything on it, I feel like
I think mine's better.
it can hit the spot. That's me struggling to think of something.
A normal meal, essentially, is your weirdest food combination.
It's not a combination either.
No,
it's not a combination.
No.
Well, what's yours?
Heat and bread is the combination there.
Mine's just as in
heat
toast
and bread is toast.
Yeah.
My weirdest food combination would probably be something along the lines of. I'll tell you what is good together. Peanut butter and bacon goes really well together. Super unhealthy, but
peanut butter. How do you work that though? How do you?
Well, it can be in a multitude of formats.
Get the bacon and put these.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you can either go down the satay route and make something with bacon in and throw in a bit of peanut butter, or you can have a bacon and peanut butter sandwich, bit of an Elvis Presley special.
I'm so lost.
Yeah,
it's much better than mine.
Mine's still the best.
Yeah, yours. I think yours is
definitely
tinned mackerel, which is horrible, and like tinned veggies.
I'm definitely not going to have that for dinner tonight.
No, I won't.
I'll add it on the list.
I won't. Yeah.
Moving on, I mean that's fascinating. We could speak about tin mackerel all day, but let's not. Julian, another question we ask all of our guests on this show is, in light of it being called Status Update, is whether you can recount a status that you updated back in the day when you first started using social media that you now look back on and cringe.
I think it's probably my general attitude to social media at the start.
Okay.
Being like quite laissez-faire, not really understanding actually the importance of it, especially in the business I'm doing now. You know, putting pictures of myself up on of my profile photos of me with my mates at Glastonbury and and thinking, you know, whatever. I won't even go into the details, but thinking that's probably not the professional outlet you want when people want to look at you and think, well, this guy's a finance guy, he's a film guy. You know,
back in the day,
he's very serious. But no, here I was putting up with these pink shades on and with my best mates, some guys we're just doing all this and all these funny. That's probably. I'm not sure it's cringe, but it was good fun.
Yeah.
But it probably wasn't the most ideal.
Yeah.
And
you look back on it now and maybe.
No, I love those photos. They're my favourite. Well, now I look at it and think, well, you know, all right, we've got a bit of Maradona, we've got a bit of Rooney up there and so on. That's great. But people want to see me with a colourful shirt on with pink shades on. And,
but if we go far enough back in your Facebook photos, we can still find that, right?
You can definitely find that.
Yeah, great.
Were you
I don't know, Ben. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's been edited or not. But I wasn't really conscious of even when I was like doing my own, like for my company, my own social media, I was just sort of haphazardly putting them on, and sometimes probably wasn't the most ideal stuff I was putting on there, but nothing X-rated or in any way. But
were you an early adopter of social media?
I was probably on there early, but I wasn't active.
An avid fan,
yeah, and then probably have a few drinks. Oh, I'll put that photo on there, and so on. So I've definitely been the logins have been taken off me.
So, but well, I mean, all of those things happened back in the day when we thought social media was just for like our friends.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about it at all.
Yeah, maybe my parents too, but never the mass public.
Well, what I also realised is when we got the professionals to have to try and professionalise me or the business. When they look back, there wasn't anything. I'm obviously quite boring because that was about as most interesting as it was. There wasn't really anything that
I definitely would not. Having read up a lot about you, boring is not a word that I would ever associate with you.
I don't know what you've read about me.
Well, I've seen your Facebook photos. You made a big switch in your career from city banker to movie mogul, documentary funder. What made you want to make that change in your career when you did?
So obviously my first, 15, 16 years of my adult career life was in the city as a banker. And, I fell into that. I got a bit lucky. And, I was part of a team that started a business. It was quite a boutique business.
Okay.
I won't bore you with the details, but it was raising money for other banks. And then all the other banks went bust during like subprime crisis. So we were busy. And so we were like all these Greek banks, Spanish banks, Italian banks, we were raising money for them, trying to make sure that they sort of kept going, because they'd all had balance sheets which were in a real mess. Yeah. And, we saw it in the UK as well. That was fun. And that was like, it was a bit Wild Westy. It was a new business that we started. We put some money into it. We got financed a bit from another bank in America and, it did really well. And so what I loved about that was the sort of the excitement of waking up in the morning and something new's happening. When you have in any new business, it didn't matter whether it's a bank or anything. It's just that buzz you get of being absolutely excited about doing something that you're trying to achieve. Things go wrong. A lot of things always go wrong.
Yeah.
But when things go right, it's fantastic. Now, sort of when we became quite successful, so probably 4 or 5 years into it, we were sort of well established. And it's sort of plain vanilla. Like every day was the same.
You got bored,
and I got bored, and I just felt like at the time you don't realize you're getting bored, but you're just not that happy. And I didn't want to be a 60-year-old guy just sit there and probably earn a decent amount of money and so on, but just not lived life again. And I wanted that buzz again. I wanted when I was 27, 28, I was seeking that again.
Yeah.
Now, if I look back and realize how hard it was going to be to just suddenly jump, then I wouldn't do things differently, but I'd probably plan it better. But I essentially just had this idea in film, which was related to finance as well. So it was, I realized that if you want to hear the boring details, I realized that private finance wasn't really available in film. And I'd been an investor in some of these schemes in the past that have blown up. Yeah. And everyone has got a mate who's lost money in film. And I just thought that if I was able to sort of bring sensible capital or be have an institution that was able to provide investment into films in a way that made people money, but also was it would sort of kill any barrier to entry, we would be successful quite quickly.
Yeah.
To be honest, there wasn't much more of a plan to it than that. I got lucky on two regards, really. I just walked out of the city one day and just said, "Fuck it, I'm doing it." So,
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, we love
fuck it, I'm doing this. And which is not the way I'd recommend anyone to do it. Plan. Anyone's doing their own business, plan it out. Get models and all that sort of stuff, and for financial scenarios. I did none of that. Just thought, let's go do this. This is my idea. Well, two things happened. I fell into the factual space of the documentaries, and then I fell in. And then at the same time, the tech companies were becoming film companies, which was making it really interesting. Yeah. So those old problems, I would say, that occurred in film when you do a deal like distributing a film in France or Germany or wherever, and you didn't know if you're going to get paid because it was quite a no-pay business, and so. If you do a deal on Netflix or you do a deal with Disney or Apple, you're going to get paid. They are big institutions, and it comes with their own difficulties. But that was lucky. I wasn't clever enough to think of that, but that's happened. So reality content, as always, to my mind, should be an alternative investment class like art is or like wine is. And so there just wasn't the conduit for people to do that. Well, A, there wasn't the confidence, and B, there wasn't really the structure for people to be able to invest. Yeah. So that was a long process trying to prove that theory right.
Yeah.
I had to go through 5 years, I guess, of going film by film. I realized quite quickly if I made documentaries on famous sports and music people, there's an implicit audience. So, we did our first film was called Supersonic, which was on Oasis.
Absolutely, honestly, one of my favorite documentaries. Like genuinely,
probably my favorite still.
Yeah, when I saw that you guys were behind it, I got really excited. I've watched it countless times.
Oh, it's a great, and
it's fantastic.
Well, the people so we were just a financier at that point. So we just came in. So the guys who made it, who were brilliant, the director and the producers, they came and said, look, Noel wants to do this. Are you keen? I thought, well, why not? I thought to myself also that we did a bit of work on what gives us a chance of making a return, that boring sort of analytical side to it. And
that was some of the planning that you said you didn't do when you left the city. And you was
I maybe have undersold the planning bit. But so we look at each investment. I mean, we don't take people's money without spending the time actually to sort of think whether it could work or not. But like documentaries were being made for, a single film documentary made for between 1 or 2 million. Whereas independent films can be made for 8 to 10, but they were making the same sort of revenue base. So I thought if they've been made for a tenth of the price and we get the same revenues, statistically, we're probably in a good place. And then if we make it on icons, then there's an implicit audience anyway.
Yeah.
It was one of the best films we've done, to be fair. Matt Whitecross, the director, fantastic director. The producers, James and Fiona and Simon, they did a great film. And then quite quickly after, we financed our Maradona film. That was so Asif Kapadia, who I don't know if he he was about to win the Oscar for Amy, and he made Senna. Senna's really the changed documentaries in terms of perception.
Fantastic.
And so we got onto a home run on those two films straight away, and I thought, well, this is easy. You know, so
this is going pretty well.
Yeah, I thought, well, you know, why didn't I do this earlier? It wasn't quite as easy as I thought after that, because obviously not everything works. But
so I mean, you were saying that you went through hundreds of films in order to educate yourself on it, because it wasn't really an industry that you saw yourself going into.
Well,
was it?
No, not at all. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a film lover.
Yeah.
I'm a finance guy. I mean, I you know, everyone knows what they like. Everyone wants to, you know. So I like to watch TV and I like to watch good programs, as we all do. The key is, I think that I probably went with a mind of doing scripted first, and we tried a few scripted films, these lower budget scripted, and they were good films, but the market's just really hard for that. But if I'm going to a streamer or a broadcaster and saying I've got a film or Oasis or Maradona, and they're made by these people, then you've got a pretty good chance of knowing at least there's some value there.
Yeah.
And then it's structuring it in the right way and making sure that you hit that value.
Yeah.
So from what I can gather then, so for your career journey, so you were a banker, doing well, got bored, thought I'm going to have a change, got into the business you're in now, not really a movie fan. So if you were kind of in banking, you're like, oh, I've kind of lost a bit of passion for it. Where would you say your passion is now? From the sounds of things, it's doing the deal.
I love deals.
Yeah,
I absolutely love deals.
Yeah.
So that's and I was that in banking, that was the same thing. It was doing the deals, finding the bank would come to us and say we want to raise capital, or so we'd talk to them on one side, and then on the other side we'd talk to the shareholders, so the pension funds, the hedge funds, and whether they're always looking for ideas, and so you just got to try and structure the deal so it fits both sides. So I guess Lorton now is no different to KBW, my old business, except that we're an investment bank to a certain degree in media, except we've now expanded that to include production, and we sell our own stuff as well. But I love doing deals. That's that waking up in the morning and thinking, can I do a deal? It doesn't quite work like that, but you don't do millions of deals. But is how do you solve the problems that are associated with each deal? I've got a variety of different deals going on at the moment, which each have their own problems, and you've got to solve the problem. And that's
so you're a problem solver. Essentially, kind of finding the solution to get the deal done.
Deals sound grand in their own way. You just go and you have an idea and you just go do it. But every football club we've dealt with, or every personality we've dealt with, they've got their own interests, or they've got their own goals that they want from it. Obviously, there's financial benefits that reside with that, but they also want to make sure that that their legacy, if it's an icon or a footballer, but we want to tell it independently. So trying to solve that dynamic as well. And that's about trust. And let's take a negative. If there's a film which hasn't worked quite well for us, how do we get out of that in a way that we don't lose that much money for investors? I mean, obviously over 30 films or whatever we've done, we've had a few that haven't worked, and luckily probably 2/3 of our films have made money and made good money, but not all of them do. But it's probably the greatest satisfaction is working out how to minimize the sort of the loss on films that aren't quite working in the way you think they are. I mean, I would say in all of our films, I'm very proud of the actual film and what we've done, and we've generally always managed to have it come in budget, and all the traditional problems that you could from the outside associate with film, we've managed to handle those. But then there still needs to be a market for it. Making sure, and that comes towards marketing it and profiling, and that actually understanding sort of social media as well, and just how that can influence. In our most recent projects, our input and effort we've done on social media to make sure it goes alongside the release of the film is much more inbuilt than it was when we first started, when we just chuck it on. And
exactly. And I guess that's the audience that you're going after, isn't it? There's been a massive rise in documentaries and for as a medium of storytelling in the last 10 years. And is that down to basically the explosion of the streaming services, the big companies having it, rather than some romantic notion that people are more invested in documentaries than when I was growing up?
Well, I think the documentaries maybe had a slightly boring perception.
When I was growing up, I thought documentaries were boring.
Yeah, there was
now.
not that they weren't any good, but stuff on BBCs of this world where I wouldn't have watched documentaries when I was younger. And I'm actually not sure why that would have been, but I think the reality is that it's probably because I always thought I would get more enjoyment from a film with a famous person in it or a film about a topic. But if you think about it this way, sort of everyone's always wanted to read autobiographies and everyone loves to hear life stories of people. That's and everyone loves true life stories generally.
Yeah.
So the reality is documentaries provide that in a way that nothing else can, and if it's intimate and it's unique and there's access, whether it's from an archive perspective or whether it's from an interview and revelation perspective, you don't get that in films, because in reality they're well planned out. There's scripts that have gone through 20 different derivations, and like documentaries provide that. So I think we've all been interested in those stories, and I think the streamers have caught onto that. Going back to my point on Asif and his documentary on Senna, that did change perception, and how people look at it. It was cinematic. It looked fantastic. It was cut in the most incredible way about an icon. And, he did it and thinking of the Amy Winehouse documentary, okay, there was a lot of Amy Winehouse fans, but the amount of people that saw that were clearly fans, people who weren't just Amy Winehouse fans. And that's the key on all of these, is to make sure it resonates above the fan base.
Yeah. I think documentaries I think they've become so popular because they offer a peek behind the curtain of these icons, like you say, who have so much lore or mystique, or like the Sennas, the Amy Winehouse's, Oasis. Like, everyone knows the story about the two brothers who don't get on anymore. Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, I love watching.
Think of the football clubs and the All or Nothings, for instance.
But I mean, as a Spurs fan. This gets brought up every podcast now. We must be on a roll here. I get to mention I'm a Spurs fan on every podcast. I did not like the All or Nothing Tottenham documentary. Probably because we were having a shit season.
You can't really counter for that when you choose to make it, though. I mean,
of course not. But for me, I felt like it was done for the masses more than for the Spurs fan, which possibly, I completely get.
Yeah, probably, and that's. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it brings more fans to the club.
Definitely.
That sort of concept of scene in the changing rooms. And look, to be honest, we've seen a lot of that now. I don't think we necessarily need to see every changing room.
But is it one of the questions that I have, and it ties into this? I felt like a lot of the conversations and things that we were being shown were watered down, which is understandable. But if you then look at the individual documentaries for people, are they doing it now for the sake of doing a documentary when they're not being fully real, and it's just a case of like being put in the limelight a little bit more and not being able to really go deeper?
Well, I can only speak for what the ones we do, or the ones we choose not to do. And if we ever get that impression that it's been done for just money, or which look, they're going to make lots of money in lots of different ways, or if they're not really into it and they're not willing to sort of go into all those bits, then we wouldn't do it. I mean, it's there's controversies with every icon, there always is, and look, I would use our Wayne Rooney documentary as an example. Like, Wayne was fantastic in how he opened up in.
It is a great documentary.
In all walks of his life, and we tried to handle that in a way that was respectful, and told a story. We're all human beings that have our flaws, and so famous people are no different, and sometimes they're put on a pedestal, which is perhaps not necessarily right. Wayne was very honest about everything, and he was one of the greatest footballers that's come out of the British Isles for a generation at least. And he had a lot of pressure on him because of exploding onto scene as a youngster,
16 when he did it,
and what all that and the pressures that come with that. And he dealt with that fantastically well. And he's a fabulous human being. I love him to bits. And he was very, very honest and open about everything. And that made the documentary without a doubt. If it had not been, I think the audiences would have seen through that and would have been cheated.
Yeah. I was speaking.
So you do get sorry to interrupt. You do get documentaries, I think, that are watered down, and you end up feeling, well, I didn't really get what I wanted there.
Just on the topic of Rooney, because I know that you guys did the Colin Rooney doc covering the Wagatha Christie trial and all that going on. I'm interested to know what kind of impacts you felt that had from a business perspective for Lorton? Because obviously that was a time where it was everywhere. It was a story that everyone knew about, massive on social, loads of conversations about it, headlines, court case. When you got the opportunity to do that doc or finance that doc, was it a bit of a golden egg?
So we were close with, the family.
Yeah.
And
Is that how you got the rights to it?
Well,
By
I mean, I
having
guess
previously-
it's going back to that trust point.
Yeah.
I think I would like to say we built up that trust because of how we dealt with his film, which was an honest. And I think we didn't hide from any of the good and the bad. So that trust was there. There was clearly an opportunity to make something that had sort of caught fire in the nation.
It was going to get watched for sure.
Yeah, but think about sort of the unauthorized Wagapher projects. They were not that good without sort of beating around the bush, and it wasn't just because they didn't necessarily have the access. It was because I think they just went for the headlines, and sort of if you watch the Wagapher, it's much more, the implications of social media and the impact that has on people, the world of celebrity and the pressures and the sort of the problems that results in that. I would like to think that sort of got people thinking about, these people are in the public eye, they've been successful, and they may or may not have money or not, but actually they have pressures, and and it's a lot about
what's
trust.
the human impact behind all of that.
And there was a massive human impact to that, and throughout the whole, and we wanted to respect that when we made that. And, luckily we had good partners in our co-production company, Dorothy Street, and with Disney as well. And so we want everything we do as well. We want to make sure it's not salacious. It's not tabloidy, which was clearly Wagapher in itself is tabloidy by nature. And so make it so it sort of looked good and it made sense. And that's probably, we could have done that so badly. But I'd like to think it was done in a way that was enjoyable, but also respectful.
Yeah.
Well, it was. I suppose you were.
And it was a big hit on Disney were very happy. So
I suppose you were making it at a time where it was obviously quite tense for the family anyway.
They don't want to get in any more court cases.
No, exactly. No, I was just going to ask to follow on from that, and this may be something that you can't necessarily comment on, but was there, I mean, is there, because it was a court case, like a real court case that was going on, was there anything that wasn't maybe able to be covered in the documentary in the end? Weirdly,
I would have thought before we started making it, I would have expected there to be a lot, but we never really had that problem. A lot, because there was a court case, and a lot, I mean, it was all there for everyone to see.
Yeah, that's true.
Then we didn't have that problem so much. I think we wanted to make sure it was balanced and fair as much as it could be. So in honest answer, there weren't bits, that we wanted to put in that we couldn't put in.
Yeah.
And no one told us that.
Yeah.
But it was more about respectfully telling the story.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
That's not really an answer to your question, but
it is. No, it is, because I think I was very pleased with when you sort of sit back and you allow the dust to settle, and you look at what it was and what was said, and what Colleen was very open and honest, and we didn't. It's not like we had to go through millions of different cuts and say we couldn't put this and that. It wasn't that at all. It was quite a seamless affair. Well, I think her honesty started from the very start when she put that social post up. I mean, exactly. I remember reading that for the first time,
and it just went
mad. That broke the internet.
Absolutely,
it's the trial itself.
Yeah.
But the trial having happened, it was all out there for everyone to see anyway.
Yeah.
And we wanted to. It was Colleen's story.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't really the Wagapher story. It was Colleen's story.
Sure.
And so we could tell that story in a way where, all of that stuff that got the headlines was there anyway. People knew that. So we didn't really need to focus on that. We just need to focus on sort of what actually happened and how it impacted the family, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, that ties us on quite nicely by bringing this conversation back to social media.
Yeah.
If you take that case as an example, everything was played out online, people commenting, people creating their own content and so on. How then, if we look at documentary and filmmaking, how is that going to compete moving forward with short form snappy content and decreasing attention spans for younger generations?
Yeah, it's a $1 million question. That I think there's a medium between the two. I don't think you can just say blanket that young people aren't interested in longer form, and I don't think that is the case at all.
I don't think
anyway.
it is either.
I think that if you make good, interesting, insightful, independent pieces of content, whether they're 5 minutes, whether they're 10 minutes, whether they're 2 hours, people will watch it. I think, there's a lot of shit that's made and people don't watch that. That's fair enough. If something's crap and makes people turn off within 5 minutes, or people are disappointed, you can't cheat the audience.
Yeah.
It's less about the length of the actual piece of content. Now, of course, some platforms or businesses are more suited towards shorter form than longer form. But I don't think that the concept of the audience and what they want can be defined by length of time. I think it's just been people want to be interested in something. They want to be excited by something. They want to see something new,
educated,
or unique. Educate. It can be many different things, and it doesn't have to be celebrity. But I'm making that bet anyway because
I think it's a good answer.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think it's a really
quality
good
versus
answer.
quantity.
Yeah, look. So the streamers. Yeah, it's not secret that they've had to sort of retrench a little bit and look at their businesses and make sure those early days of throwing money at content and volume of content, that's changed, and that's probably good. But they are still interested in good content, and I think the public is still there for it, whether it's young or old.
I was going to ask, and this follows on from that question. In our world now of like creator social media, people like big YouTubers like Mr. Beast, Sidemen. Do you ever see Lorton or the area that you work in moving into work with these creators for their online social media in terms of financing their videos?
Yeah. I think. Well, we're certainly moving into the sphere without sort of giving any details of people in that that area, and looking at telling stories, longer form, to be fair. And that's certainly a demand from the streamers as well. So, it's not as simple as this, but if a streamer's looking at someone's following and there's an interesting story to it, they will be interested in that story, even if it's not a sort of a big footballer. So sort of the influencers or whatever they may be, there is interesting content to be made around those people. And, people are sort of, individuals are not just a sportsman or not just an influencer or a media star. They're sort of crossing. I mean, just look at these boxing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you've already started to see sort of the interest from streamers in making projects on people who sort of cross over in different ways, whether they're musicians or whatever. We have to move with those times.
Well, that's what my point initially when I thought of what Jake was saying is that a danger to the industry with the creators being able to do it themselves now?
I think it's a
bit
plus.
more. You saying it? Yeah,
I think it's a
more
plus. I think there's more because there's only so many footballers that are interested and you can make on. Like, I mean, my worry a year and a half ago was, at some point this is, we're going to run out. Anyone that's not saying all footballers, I'm sure, are interesting, but like there is a point
beyond making content about them though.
Yeah.
Do you think you could get to a space where you're financing them to make content or supporting them in their production rather than making stuff about them?
Possibly. It's probably not something we've developed into Lorton's at a stage in its business where we've sort of, we've had the startup phase. Yeah. And, getting people to know who we are, what we're doing. Yeah. We have to evolve. We're now sort of, even if you look at sort of what we're doing, the football clubs that we're doing now, we're doing less so of the individual footballer film documentaries, although we might do if there's interest in one here or there. But we've evolved into that docu-series style of football. And even now, that has to evolve as well. But I mean, to your point on sort of the Tottenham All or Nothing, people, the audience moves very quickly.
There's a bit of fatigue around some of that.
Just to my point, I always get asked about sort of changing rooms and access. Well, I'm a football fan. And getting in there once or twice and seeing Jurgen Klopp say, give a bit of chat to the players, that's fine. But we don't need to see every game. Sure. Yeah. Well, what I want to see as a football fan is how transfers are done. Yeah. The wheeling and dealing there, or
loves a deal.
The proper stuff behind the scenes.
Or like even over the bigger, like, so on Liverpool, for instance, we flew over a few weeks ago to Boston and spent a lot of time with the ownership group of Liverpool. Fantastic time. I mean, we caught some brilliant stuff on that.
Yeah.
That was absolute film dynamite to me.
Yeah.
And I think will be to a football fan as well, especially Liverpool fans, but probably to any football fan. Understand in this world of, and I'm speaking quite sort of openly about it, but it's a really topical at the moment. So you look at football clubs trying to manage their businesses so that they don't break financial fair play.
Yeah.
And so as a football fan, we all want to be football managers.
Yeah.
And
I used to love that game.
And yeah, me too. And like the Football Manager, we used to think about how much money have I got in the bank to buy that player or this player. And like, we, as a fan watching it, I want to know how those football clubs are working out, how much money they got in the bank before they break a rule or here or there. And that sort of stuff. And like, the Liverpool's a great example of actually how, this ownership group came in and the club was on its knees, and have managed, from what it seems, to have circumvented all the navigations of financial fair play and acted within the rules, and at the same time have managed to compete against some clubs which are probably have not really had rules to guide them, but have used their balance sheets to get up there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but like as a football fan watching,
as a Liverpool fan.
Well, no, even like
joking.
Like we did Newcastle, for instance, and seeing, it was fascinating seeing how they're navigating these clearly tougher rules around financial fair play, and they will do a great job. They're great, there's a great ownership structure they have there, and they've done wonders for that club. But they wouldn't be able to do what Man City necessarily did when they started because just the rules are different, and that's as a fan watching it and being able to see that. If we get those little bits of dynamite, that gold dust, that's good TV. Much better in my mind than just seeing the guys running around with half their shirts off and like having a dance like as they've won a game.
How involved do you get in the production process?
Well, so we've evolved. So we as a business, we're core at our core, we're a finance business.
Yeah.
And that's our unique differentiating point. Most production companies will have an idea. They'll sort of get something set up with either the person or the club or whatever it is, and then go and get it sold to the streamer, and it's financed that way. The benefit of our model is that we can go in and say, we'll finance, let's get going, and then we'll work out who we sell it to, at whatever point in the cycle that is. So we realised quite quickly we needed to be part of the production on that. So we've been a producer on probably the last, 5 to 10 of our projects. And often that's a co-producer. We bring in these great like 72 worked with us who did a lot of the All or Nothings on the on Newcastle and on Waggafer, as I mentioned, Dorothy Street. They came on board. So we'll work with those great talents to make sure that we make the best thing possible. But we need to be in there to make sure the creative narrative is exactly what we backed.
So I did want to ask a couple of questions about ultimately the career switch up, because I think that's quite a unique part of your career story, and I think the listener will be interested in two things. One, when you knew you were going to make the switch, how trepidatious was that realization that you're like, I'm leaving finance, I'm doing
trepidatious
movie?
Is really not the word. It was madness. I think people thought I was having a nervous breakdown. Who leaves a job? And I was a pretty senior position.
Yeah, that's what I mean. This is what I'm interested.
A nice amount of money, which I could have just kept going for. So yeah, who does that? Who leaves that to film? I was happy I did it because I was probably unhappy in the job I was doing, and I knew I was going to always be sort of quite, I don't know what the right word is. I would have just not been satisfied if I could see being 10 years down the line and just being miserable. Yeah. And like, what's the point? You only live once. And so, yes, that was quite a drastic move I made to do that, and did it in quite a drastic manner. Although I probably had done a little bit of prep before, so I mean it's not
on the quiet.
Yeah, I'm moonlighting a little bit for the year before, and maybe my last year.
I mean, the easy option is just to be miserable in 10 years' time, right? And keep earning a decent living. And
I think the allure of a decent living is sometimes why people don't do that kind of thing, isn't it?
I mean, it was a huge risk. I mean, I've got 3 kids. I had responsibilities that, I had everything you do. you do because you want to further yourself, but it can't be just so egotistical to be focused on myself. I needed to make sure that whatever I did, gave stability to my children. If I look back, I would do exactly the same thing. I maybe would have provided a bit more plan into that structure so that I'd have maybe the first few years were quite fly by night,
Well, I think you've answered the second part of that question, which was, do you find more fulfillment in your career now than versus when you were a banker?
I'm very proud of both careers.
Yeah.
I think this one's still, I wouldn't. You can never sit back and say I've done it.
Do you wake up in the morning with that buzz and that feeling that you spoke?
I still
about
do.
at the top?
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes wish you get older. So I'm not 27, 28 anymore. I'm 47. So, your body just doesn't have and the mind doesn't have naturally the same energy nor get up and go. But yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think that's the proof of that is actually what I'm trying to do next for the business. So I don't want us to just sit back and be a business that is just, I want us to build out a good asset management business that has, that sort of reputation for having content as an asset class. I want us to work out ways of monetizing our back book, looking at the streamer model, maybe of working out a way of sort of bringing that together in a hybrid way. There's lots to do. I'm not going to really say what it is, but I've got ideas going on in my head the whole time about how I can develop the business at the same time as doing the bread and butter. That can be draining.
Yeah.
That
you don't switch off.
No.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
But it's I would recommend anyone who's brave enough to do that, whatever business they're doing, I will applaud. If they fail or not, the ambition to do that. If more people did that, generally, I think in this country, we'd see so much better, like that sort of entrepreneurial flair and people want to, but it's just so hard to do. And,
I think what's been fascinating about this conversation is it's not been the case of you saying, I showed up one day, wanted to quit what I'm doing, going to something new, and I've made a success out of it. You've had to be able to utilize the skills that you've already had that can be transferred over, identify the right gap for it, and then be a risk taker ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, it is risk taker, managing that risk, and especially if you're managing other people's money as well.
Yeah.
When they're giving you their money to invest, you've got to absolutely respect that and work your hardest to make sure that whatever the outcome is, you've done your best for that. And that can be the same, anyone who's starting up a business and they want backing, failure happens, and being afraid of that is probably keeps you on the edge to make sure that you don't fail, or you just do your best to make sure that you succeed. But don't be afraid of that, but also absolutely respect the backing that people give you. And I've been blessed enough, I guess, through having built up a decent reputation in the city, that people did back me and at times have been patient with me, because, Lorton hasn't just suddenly happened. It has been a long time now. I'm certainly a lot grayer and, got a lot more to say about all that period. But the reality is, I would not sit here and say it's been easy. I would say it's been fun, and it's been it's certainly been, it's made me happier, and I can see, and whatever happens to Lorton in whatever period, like 3, 4, 5 years time, everyone has goals of what the end game or what that might look like. I probably won't be the type of person who just sits and does nothing. I don't think I will do anything as mad as this, but I will want to have something that challenges me. It might be completely a non-monetary style of sort of endeavor.
Yeah.
In fact, I already know what I would probably want to do, and that will just keep me going until I can just sit back and smoke a pipe or something.
Yeah.
Do they have pipes anymore?
Yeah, I'm sure. After a successful career, you can get whatever you want, really.
Don't smoke.
Yeah. Julian, I mean, that's been, I think we've covered so much ground over the last
I hope I've made sense.
But no, you have, and it's been really inspiring.
I could speak to you for another hour.
Yeah, it's been really inspiring to listen to you.
Well,
and
thank you for having me on.
And I think there's some really amazing takeaways for people in business, entrepreneurship, etc. As to, well, hopefully some key things that they could have learned, which I'm sure they've been able to do. So
take risks.
Yeah.
Well, we'll take risks, but I have a dream. If you have a dream and you probably plan it a bit better than I did, but have a dream and go for it. Look, failure is, people fail. and you only learn from that, and you make mistakes. People always make mistakes, and like learning from that is the only way of improving yourself.
Yeah,
without
amazing.
doubt.
Well, let's leave it at that. Julian, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming on, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Questions. Appreciate it.
Amazing. So that's it. Thanks again to you for tuning in, and of course to Julian Bird for coming onto the podcast and helping us answer the question, is it ever too late to find success in a new career? I think we know the answer to that, Jake.
100%. Some of the documentaries that Lorton Entertainment have worked on, Oasis Supersonic, I'm not joking, I've watched it countless times.
I just loved his angle about the fact that in a world of short form content and mania that we see, there is still the place for a documentary in the long form.
Quality over quantity, I think, is the key takeaway.
Sure thing. We've got plenty more exciting episodes in the pipeline for you and a whole backlog for you to check out. So make sure you hit follow in the podcast app.
Yes, and as the marketing guy at Disrupt, it's my job to say that you should come and say hello if you think that our agency can be of any use to you or your brand. All the details for the agency will be in the show notes, as well as the links to Stevie and I's LinkedIn. So drop by, send us a little cheeky connection request. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll see you in next week's episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.